Hello everyone. Welcome to Deku Universe. Today we are beginning part 3 of What If Deku Became a Girl? The fanfiction is created by aywashe on archiveofourown.org. Now let's begin. Bakugo crouched low, breath ragged, palms sparking with volatile fury. Every instinct in him screamed to fight, to blast his way through the BSTRDS who thought they could chain him up like some rabid dog. Dabi's flames crackled in the dim light, and Spinner adjusted his grip on his sword. The tension in the air was ready to ignite. Then knock knock. Everyone froze. The sound echoed absurdly in the warehouse's tense silence. Pizza DLVRY for Kamino hideout. A voice called awkwardly from behind the door. Bakugo blinked. Spinner looked at Dabi. Even Shigaraki tilted his head, confused. And that's when the entire opposite wall exploded inward with a thunderous crash. Concrete shattered. Dust and debris clouded the air as a towering figure surged forward through the wreckage. "I am here," bellowed All Might, muscles coiled, cape flaring behind him like a banner of justice. Bakugo's eyes widened. The League barely had time to react. Shigaraki snapped to attention, already barking, "Kurogiri, get us out." But before Kurogiri could even lift his hand, a blur of motion whipped through the air. Lacquered chain prison. Kamui wood swung in from above, thick vines of reinforced wood snapping tight around every villain in sight. Arms, legs, torsos, pinning them in place before Kurogiri's warp gates could so much as shimmer. Jijich. Dabi snarled, blue fire sparking as he twisted to burn through the bindings. Wham. A gust of wind slammed into him a split second later. Gran Torino shot across the room in a blur, delivering a sharp kick to Dabi's head that sent him crashing into a support beam. Bakugo's lips curled into a wicked grin. DMN. Took you long enough. All Might stood at the center of the chaos, already surging toward Shigaraki, who was the only one still half standing. "No more running, Tamura." Shigaraki, the symbol of peace, growled. "It ends now." Kamui Woods tightened the restraints. Gran Torino landed beside Bakugo, steady despite his age. "You all right, kid?" the old pro asked, glancing at him quickly. Bakugo spat BLD to the side. "Yeah. I was just about to bust out anyway." Gran Torino didn't argue. Just grunted. "Stubborn as ever. Let's get you out of here." As Kamui and Gran Torino cleared the area, All Might advanced like a storm, his very presence crushing the morale out of the air. And for once, Bakugo didn't feel the need to explode his way out. Amid the dust and restraints, All Might turned to Bakugo. For just a moment, the blazing fury of the symbol of peace dimmed, replaced by something quieter. He walked over, his massive frame shadowing the boy. "Young Bakugo," All Might's voice softened. "I'm sorry. You should have never been caught up in this. We failed to protect you." Bakugo didn't meet his eyes right away. He flexed his fingers, burned and bruised, and grit his teeth. "I wasn't scared," he muttered. "Don't say it like I needed saving." All Might smiled faintly, not in mockery but in respect. "I know you weren't." Bakugo finally looked up, defiant fire in his glare. "I would have fought my way out. Just needed a minute." "I believe you." Their moment was shattered by a low, cracking laugh. Shigaraki, bound in Kamui Wood's prison but still upright, glared at the heroes with manic contempt. "You think this is over? You think this was all we had?" His lips pulled back in a grin too wide, too wrong. "You heroes are so DMN confident. But we're not few." He turned to Kurogiri. "Bring them in. No. All of them." Kurogiri shifted, shadows pulsing in his mist-like form as he activated his warp gate. His voice as calm as ever. "My apologies, Tamura. I cannot." Shigaraki stiffened. "What?" "They're not there." The words hit the room like a gunshot. Shigaraki's grin faltered. His breath hitched. All Might stepped forward, shoulders squared, eyes burning with truth. "The other team hit your Noma factory at the same time. It's gone. The facility was destroyed. Your monsters are in custody." Shigaraki's expression twisted, shock, rage, and disbelief all in one breath. You planned this," he screamed. "This was a coordinated strike," All Might confirmed. "We weren't going to let you slip away again." Shigaraki thrashed in his bindings. "This isn't over. My Mr. Hill." But Gran Torino silenced him with a sharp jab to the neck. The boy slumped, still breathing but out cold. The warehouse was quiet again. Bakugo exhaled slowly, shoulders lowering just slightly as the weight of the moment settled over him. Not escape. Rescue. With Shigaraki trembling in the grip of rage and defeat, All Might stepped forward, looming like judgment itself, his shadow cast long and heavy across the crumbling floor. "This is game over, Tamura Shigaraki," All Might declared, voice ringing with unshakable finality. "The League of Villains is finished. Your plans, your monsters, all of it ends here." Bound in Kamui Wood's wooden prison, Shigaraki lifted his head, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But his eyes burned brighter than ever, wild and unbroken. "No," he rasped, then louder, a snarl tearing from his throat. "No. This isn't the end." All Might narrowed his eyes. "This is just the beginning." Shigaraki spat. "The society you built, the fake smiles, the rotten peace, you call this justice?" He leaned forward, hatred radiating from every word. "We're going to extinguish everything you stand for. Every hypocrite, every coward clinging to your name, we'll burn it all down." All Might's fists clenched at his sides, but he didn't speak. Instead, Shigaraki turned his fury toward his last remaining ally. "Kurojirai. Get us out of here. Now." The mist-like Nomu shimmered beside him, hands rising to create the familiar swirling portals of his warp gate. But before the warp could fully form, shunk. A silent blur darted past the heroes and into the fray. Edgeshot materialized behind Kurojirai in an instant, body already thinned to a needlepoint thread. His voice was calm, precise. "Ninpo, thousand sheet pierce, halo spiral." In a flash, he slipped into Kurojairi's form, his foldabody quirk unraveling inside the warp user like a lance of air pressure. Kurojirai spasmed. His portal collapsed in a pulse of distorted light. Then, without a word, the misty villain slumped to the floor, unconscious. Shigaraki froze, stunned. What did?" "All routes of escape have been neutralized," Edgeshot stated plainly, stepping back into view. Kamui Woods reinforced the restraints around Shigaraki, Dabi, and the others. Gran Torino gave a low nod. "It's done." The warehouse, moments ago a den of chaos and violence, now stood in utter silence, broken only by the whirring of distant police drones and the footsteps of approaching heroes. All Might looked down at Shigaraki one last time. "This was your choice," he said. "And now you face the consequences." Bakugo barely had time to breathe. The villains were restrained. Kurojirai was down. Shigaraki was ranting like a lunatic. All Might stood tall, unbreakable, and the cavalry had arrived. For once it felt like the nightmare was ending. Bakugo's fist slowly unclenched. Maybe it was finally over. And then, something changed. The air shifted. A low, sickening gurgle echoed from nowhere, and everywhere. A ripple of darkness split the space beside the League, like reality itself had torn open. A thick, oily black liquid began to bleed into the warehouse from midair, writhing and pulsing like it was alive. What the hell? Bakugo took a step back, instincts flaring. All Might's head whipped toward the sound. "Everyone stay alert." The black mass twisted, and then exploded outward as several Nomus emerged, snarling and twitching, their grotesque forms oozing from the living void like a nightmare reborn. "What?" Kamui Woods barked, reeling back. "No." Gran Torino's eyes narrowed. "There were no signals, how did they?" Even Shigaraki looked thrown off. I didn't order this." Before anyone could react, a guttural choking sound cut through the chaos. From Bakugo. He staggered, clutching his throat, eyes wide as something began to bubble in his mouth. Not BLD, something darker. Thicker. Wrong. "All Might," he rasped, voice cracking. A stream of the same black oily liquid poured from his lips like he was drowning in it. "No." All Might shouted, reaching out as Bakugo fell to his knees, body shaking. "Bakugo." The sludge wasn't just pouring out, it was pulling him in. His body began to dissolve into the void, warping and stretching unnaturally. He could feel the world slipping like gravity itself was turning inside out. "What the hell is happening to me?" All Might lunged forward, arms outstretched, but the black liquid lashed out, forming a barrier that pushed the symbol of peace back, tendrils writhing violently. "Hold on," he roared. "Don't let it take you." But Bakugo was already halfway gone, his eyes wide in fury and panic. "Diamenit, Diamenit." He reached out with one hand, not even sure who he was reaching for, All Might, the heroes, anyone. But the warp swallowed him whole. Gone. The space where he had been twisted shut with a grotesque pop of pressure. All Might staggered a step forward, eyes still locked on the place Bakugo had vanished. Bakugo. The warehouse was dead silent now. Except for the sound of Shigaraki's faint, rasping laughter. Bakugo hit the ground hard. The black liquid spat him out like a discarded object, slick and cold against his skin. He coughed violently, gasping for air, the bitter taste of that sludge still burning his throat. Then he looked up, and everything inside him went cold. The space around him was dark and vast, walls lined with strange machinery, glowing monitors casting eerie shadows. And standing at the center of it all, like a grotesque king upon a throne of ruin, all for one. Bakugo's breath caught in his chest. He scrambled backward instinctively, fists already sparking. Before he could say anything, the monster, raised a hand. "I apologize, Bakugo," All For One said, voice calm, smooth, disturbingly kind. The method of retrieval was unpleasant, but necessary. Bakugo didn't answer. He just glared, palms flaring hotter. A familiar gurgle filled the space behind him. More black liquid spilled in, warping reality again. One by one, the League of Villains began to emerge: Shigaraki, Dabi, Toga, Spinner, even the unconscious body of Kurogiri, slumped and still oozing mist. Shigaraki collapsed to one knee, panting, face twisted in a storm of frustration and humiliation. All For One turned to him slowly. "You failed again, Tamura." Shigaraki's fingers twitched against the floor. "They took everything. The Nomus, Kurogiri." But All For One raised his hand, and Shigaraki went silent. "I'm not angry," he said gently. "Nor disappointed." Shigaraki looked up, eyes wide. "You're still learning," All For One continued, stepping closer. "Failure is part of that process. Each time you fall, you stand back up stronger." His gaze shifted to Bakugo, sharp and calculating. "And you still have assets. The Vanguard Action Squad remains intact, and you have him." His smile widened beneath his mask. "Bakugo. A vital piece." Bakugo tensed, the very mention of being called a piece, igniting his fury. "I'm not yours," he snarled. "I don't care what kind of freak circus this is. Let me go and I won't blow your head off." All For One laughed, a low resonant sound that echoed in Bakugo's bones. Still defiant. "That's good," he mused, voice syrup smooth. "That fire, it's what makes you special." He turned back to Shigaraki, resting a hand lightly on his apprentice's shoulder. "Try again. And again. As many times as you need to. Because in the end, everything I do is for you." Shigaraki's fingers twitched again. Slower this time. But he didn't pull away. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. He wasn't just captured anymore. He was at the center of their next move. And he was going to make DMN sure they regretted every second of it. The air shifted, a sudden spike in pressure like thunder right before it crashes. Bakugo barely had time to react before a golden blur came screaming down from above. Boom. The entire hideout shook as wind exploded outward in all directions. Smoke and debris burst from the point of impact, throwing sparks across the dark chamber like shattered stars. But All For One did not fall. He stood firm, one hand raised, massive fingers curled tightly around All Might's forearm, catching the blow that should have crushed him. "You again," All For One said, his voice calm but his grip pulsing with raw power. "I was wondering how long it would take." All Might's eyes blazed, unrelenting. "I'm taking everything back," he growled, pushing harder, the floor beneath their feet cracking from the pressure. "You won't hurt anyone else. Not ever again." A flicker of amusement crossed All For One's masked face. "Still clinging to that stubborn resolve," he mused. "Do you intend to kill me this time?" Bakugo scrambled to his feet, BLD rushing in his ears. His heart pounded, not from fear but fury. "All Might," he started, stepping forward, but the clash above him intensified, shockwaves hammering through the room as two legends collided. It wasn't just a battle of strength. It was the battle for everything. The air split with a deafening boom. Bakugo barely had time to brace before the shockwave hit. He was thrown back, body slamming against broken concrete as the force of All Might and All For One's clash cracked through the ruins like a bomb had gone off. He hit the ground hard, again, but forced himself up through the pain. Across from him, Shigaraki and the rest of the Vanguard Action Squad were also reeling, dust and debris settling around their sprawled forms. At the center of it all stood All Might, golden aura flaring wildly, locked in a brutal standoff with his ultimate nemesis. "I won't let you take him," All Might growled, his voice like thunder. "I won't let you destroy anyone else. Not again. Not like 5 years ago." His eyes locked on Bakugo. "I'm saving you. This time, I won't fail. I'll put all of you behind bars. Every last one." With a burst of power, he lunged forward, fists cocked with devastating purpose. All For One raised a hand calmly, and unleashed hell. A massive blast wave surged from his palm, roaring like a hurricane and hitting All Might full force. The symbol of peace was blasted back, sent flying through several buildings in a shattering spiral of force and rubble. The sky lit up with dust and fire. Bakugo's breath hitched. All Might. The villain stood tall amidst the chaos, his cloak rippling in the storm of his own making. That blend, All For One murmured to himself, tilting his head. Air cannon and spring-like limbs, quite the effective pairing. But I'll need to refine it. Add in a few reinforcement quirks to optimize the force curve. His mask turned slightly toward Bakugo. Don't worry, he said with chilling calm. That wasn't enough to kill him. Bakugo's fists clenched. He didn't believe him. Didn't trust him. But something in his voice, too confident. Calculating, sent a chill down Bakugo's spine. Then All For One turned to Shigaraki. It's time to go. Take Bakugo and escape. From his fingers, black tendrils slithered out like vipers and plunged into Kurogiri's unconscious body. What the hell are you doing? Magna shouted, recoiling. Why not just use your warp quirk? Why dig into Kurogiri like that? All For One didn't even glance at her. My warping quirk is not calibrated to assist your retreat, he said smoothly. Only Kurogiri can get you all out safely. Bakugo tried to move, tried to bolt, but more tendrils whipped through the air, corralling him in place. He cursed under his breath, heart pounding. The warp gate began to form, swirling with that same black liquid he hated. But then, I'm not done yet. The earth trembled. All Might reappeared, bursting from the rubble like a comet, his golden form blazing with righteous fury. His eyes locked onto All For One. You're not escaping, he growled. Not this time. All For One didn't flinch. He turned to Shigaraki one last time. You still have room to grow, he said softly. Don't forget that. Then he surged forward to meet All Might's final charge. Bakugo staggered back as All Might and All For One collided again, a storm of light and pressure tearing the air apart. His vision blurred for a split second. Too much power in one space, but then something else crashed through the chaos. A wall behind the battlefield exploded outward in a spray of concrete and dust. What the? Three figures shot through the breach, fast and furious. Bakugo's eyes sharpened instantly, heart kicking hard in his chest as he recognized the blur of green electricity sparking through the air. Deku. Izuku Midoriya held on tight to Kirishima's arm, legs glowing with full cowl, muscles taut as coiled wire. On the other side, Ida's engines blazed with blue fire, Recipro burst screaming beneath him and Todoroki with his showy ice. Sandwiched between them, Kirishima was fully hardened, like a crimson shield driving them forward. It all happened in seconds, then, whoosh, Todoroki's ice erupted beneath them, forming a shimmering ramp into the sky like a frozen slingshot. And they launched. The trio soared upward, silhouettes slicing through the smoke-filled sky like missiles. Right above the war zone, right above him. Bakugo's breath caught in his throat. They were coming for him. He felt a rush of emotion surge in his chest. Rage, disbelief, and something that burned far deeper than pride. "Damn it," he muttered, fists clenching. "I told you not to come." Even now, even like this, she couldn't help herself. But as he watched Midoriya and the others fly through the sky, reckless and bright, something twisted in his gut. Not fear. Not shame. Something else. They weren't there to save him. They were fighting to stand with him. His pride screamed in protest, but his heart roared with fire. Bakugo's gaze snapped upward. The trio was closing in fast. Midoriya in the lead, sparks crackling down her limbs, Ida's engines flaring with blue fire, and Kirishima, solid as a rock, hand outstretched like a lifeline. And then All For One turned his head. A low hum filled the air, danger. Bakugo saw the shift in the villain's stance, the way his massive arm drew back, energy distorting the space around it like a bomb about to go off. He's gonna hit them. But before All For One could unleash the attack, smash. All Might slammed into him from the side, fist connecting with a titanic crack that split the sky. The force of it sent shockwaves through the battlefield, sending dust and debris cascading down like rain. Bakugo's eyes locked onto the trio soaring above. They were close now, so close, and through the haze he saw Kirishima reach out. "Bakugo!" Kirishima shouted. "Take my hand." Bakugo grit his teeth, heart hammering. His muscles burned with the aftermath of the blast earlier, every instinct in him resisting the idea of being rescued. But Kirishima, he wasn't pleading. He wasn't coddling. He was offering. And Bakugo knew, Deku wouldn't push it. Ida wouldn't force it. But Kirishima. He was the only one Bakugo would even consider trusting with this. That's when Shigaraki lunged. Pale fingers reached out, twisted in desperation, inches from Bakugo's shoulder. No. With a guttural roar, Bakugo turned, palm already sparking. His gauntlet was gone, but he didn't need it. The explosion ripped from his hand like a cannon, hurling him into the sky in a fiery arc. He felt the wind tear at his skin, the burn of the recoil across his back. Then contact. His hand smacked into Kirishima's. Strong. Steady. Familiar. Bakugo grinned, sweat stirring his face. TC, took you long enough, shitty hair. Kirishima laughed as he pulled him in. You're heavier than I remember. Bakugo didn't answer. But as the wind rushed past and the battlefield fell behind, he glanced at Midoriya, sparks crackling, eyes wide with worry. He didn't say thank you. But the smile said enough. The train station was quieter than it had any right to be. The air was still thick with tension, the kind that clings to your skin long after the battle's over. Bakugo sat on a metal bench, arms crossed, still scuffed with grime and dried BLD, but his breathing had evened out. His knee bounced, agitated, impatient, still wired. They'd pulled it off. As much as it pissed him off to admit, the idiots actually did it. His jaw clenched as he watched Midoriya pacing nearby, holding her phone to her ear. Her costume was torn up, face bruised, hair matted with sweat and soot. But her voice, calm, controlled. That annoyingly earnest tone still intact. Todoroki-kun, you made it out. Thank God. Is Momo with you? Pause. Then a relieved sigh. I'm glad. We're at the train station. Everyone's safe. Yeah. I think we can call it a success. Bakugo looked away, scowling. Success, huh? The word tasted bitter. His pride was still bleeding, ego bruised raw. Being the one who needed to be saved, being the DMN target, he hated it. Hated the feeling of being helpless. But worse. Worse was how close everything had come to falling apart. He flexed his fingers, remembering the moment Shigaraki reached for him. If he hadn't blasted away, if Kirishima hadn't, he glanced at the others. Midoriya hung up the call and turned toward him, green eyes soft and tired but relieved. Ito was checking in with the station guards, keeping his usual stiff composure. Kirishima, he just sat across from him, arms resting on his knees, watching Bakugo with a quiet sort of concern he didn't voice. No one said anything about thanks. Or how reckless it was. Or how stupid Bakugo was for not waiting for a proper rescue. Good. They knew better. Still it gnawed at him, how close it had come. How weak he'd felt. But they were all alive. And for now that was enough. Demon extras, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. Better not expect me to start crying or something. Kirishima smirked from his seat. Wouldn't dream of it. Bakugo clicked his tongue and leaned back, eyes drifting to the sky beyond the platform. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for tonight, they'd won. The low rumble of the train in the distance gave them a few minutes of quiet. Bakugo had his arms folded, scowl etched on his face like it was chiseled in. Kirishima leaned back beside him on the bench, casually kicking his legs out, not saying much. Just sitting there. Being chill. Which meant he definitely had something to say. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. You've been quiet too. Long. Spit it out already. Kirishima blinked, then gave a small, guilty grin. Heh, figured you'd blow up at me no matter when I said it. That depends, Bakugo said, eye twitching. Is it stupid? Well, Kirishima rubbed the back of his neck. I figured I should be honest. While you were in villain hands and she was recovering in the hospital, I kissed Midoriya. Bakugo's entire body tensed like someone had just pulled a pin on a grenade. It seemed like his body was heavier now than he was chained up in the hideout earlier. You what? Kirishima held his hands up fast. Forehead. Just the forehead. It wasn't like that. I told her to take care of herself before she decided anything crazy. It was more like encouragement. Bakugo stared at him like he'd just admitted to punching All Might. But Bakugo shouldn't make a big deal out of it, right? You kissed Deku. On the forehead. Why yeah. Why the hell would you even tell me that, you rock-brained dumbass? Kirishima winced but didn't stop grinning. You're the only one who'd actually react, man. Ida just scolded me about boundaries and Todoroki blinked like he didn't know what emotions were. Bakugo looked away sharply, jaw tight. His foot started tapping again, faster this time. You're all idiots, he muttered. Kirishima gave him a sideways glance. You mad? I'm pissed you're making it a thing, that's all. His voice dropped lower, tight. It didn't mean anything, right? Kirishima blinked. Then smiled softer. No. I mean not like that. I just wanted her to know she wasn't alone. Bakugo let out a sharp exhale through his nose. Umph. For a long second he didn't say anything. Then, she's still an idiot for throwing herself into that rescue. Kirishima grinned wider. And you're an idiot for smiling when you grabbed my hand midair. Shut up before I punch you through the next train. Yeah. They sat in silence again, the buzz of the station folding around them. But the tension had shifted, lighter now. And though Bakugo's glare hadn't softened, his foot had finally stopped tapping. He didn't say it out loud. But somewhere deep down, the fact that she'd come for him anyway. It burned hotter than any explosion he could make. Midoriya stood there, her gaze fixed on the giant screen above the station. Kirishima was practically glowing with relief, his grin wide and full of energy, now that Bakugo was safe. He was happy and it was clear to anyone who saw him. But Midoriya couldn't share that same sense of joy, not entirely. Her heart still felt heavy with the weight of their choices. Bakugo was safe, yes, but the battle was far from over. On the screen, All Might and All For One clashed again, their power rippling through the air and shaking the screen with each hit. Midoriya clenched her hands, her fingers trembling a little. Did we do the right thing? Her mind kept replaying the same question over and over. Did we leave All Might to fight on his own because we were scared? It wasn't that she didn't believe in All Might, she did. He was the symbol of peace. He had been their pillar of strength for so long. But, could they have done more? Could they have helped somehow? She exhaled shakily, feeling the familiar weight of her new body, a body that was still difficult to get used to. The changes in her shape weren't just physical. Her balance felt off at times, and every time she moved she could feel her chest and hips throwing her off. She couldn't lie to herself. It made moving through certain spaces more challenging. It frustrated her, but it was something she was learning to deal with. But right now, her body felt like a constant reminder that things were far from normal. Kirishima caught her in his wide smile. You okay, Deku? You're looking a little serious there. We did it, right? Bakugo's safe now. His hand slapped her back with a cheer. Midoriya tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She trailed off, glancing over at the screen where All Might was taking another hit from All For One. I can't help but wonder if we should have stayed. I mean, All Might's fighting on his own. What if we could have done something? Kirishima raised his eyebrows, but before he could respond, Bakugo grunted from beside them, his usual scowl plastered on his face. TCH, are you seriously gonna sit around questioning your decision? We made the call. All Might has this. I get it, Kakin, Midoriya responded, turning to face him, her voice quieter than usual. But he can't fight alone forever. What happens when he gets overwhelmed? What happens when it's too much? Kirishima nudged her lightly, his voice steady but reassuring. Midoriya, look. All Might's the hero. He's the one who's been taking down the big villains forever. We've still got time to get stronger. For now we did what we could. Katsuki's safe and that's a win. Midoriya sighed, looking back up at the screen. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But there was always that little piece of doubt in her chest. The battle raged on, All Might pushing back against All For One's relentless attacks. Despite her doubts, Midoriya knew this was his fight. He was the symbol of peace. But was it enough? Just then Kirishima's voice broke through her thoughts. Hey, look at that. The fight's still going strong on the big screen. Midoriya's eyes snapped back to the broadcast, watching as All Might was sent flying by another wave of force from All For One. Her heart skipped a beat, he was taking the brunt of it all. Bakugo was quieter now, his arms crossed, staring at the screen as well. That BSTRD still can't go down, huh? Midoriya couldn't help but nod. He's not going down without a fight. She felt a tug in her chest as she glanced at Bakugo again, knowing he must have felt something similar to her. Even if he would never admit it, he cared. It wasn't just about All Might winning, it was about everyone getting through this. Together. Her thoughts wandered back to the battle. Could they have done more? Would they? She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the here and now. They had a victory to savor. For now they needed to hold on to what they could. All Might's got this, Kirishima added again, his optimism unwavering. We just gotta trust him. Midoriya took a deep breath, forcing a smile. Yeah, he'll pull through. He always does. As the battle between All Might and All For One reached its final crescendo, the ground beneath them seemed to tremble, shaking with the sheer force of their clash. Every blow was a thunderous shockwave, each impact felt through the air as if the very world itself were holding its breath. All Might, battered but still unyielding, pushed forward with everything he had left. His punches were fueled by years of being the symbol of peace, by the lives he had saved and the hope he had instilled in countless hearts. Yet even the greatest hero couldn't hold back forever. With one last mighty punch, All Might finally drove All For One to his knees, his power a brilliant flash of light, a last desperate burst of strength. All For One struggled, groaning in pain, but it was too late. The battle had ended. Endeavor and All Might watch All For One being placed in the Iron Maiden. Now that All For One is properly imprisoned, the citizens watching from their homes cheered, their faith in All Might renewed, as if they could feel the end of the war had come. All Might stood tall, though the weight of his injuries and the years of battle had taken their toll. He took a deep, shuddering breath, his body trembling from the effort, but his voice, still strong, still resonating, rang out. He pointed directly at the camera, his gaze unwavering, his eyes locking onto the millions watching across the nation. "Next it's your turn," he said, his voice clear despite the exhaustion. His words were more than a call to action. They were a passing of the torch. The citizens erupted in joy, their praise for All Might reaching deafening levels. They cheered for their hero, for the man who had saved them all. The streets were alive with celebration, fireworks exploding in the distance, music and cheers filling the air. But as the camera pulled back to show the jubilant scene, Izuku stood frozen in the crowd, his eyes wide and his breath caught in his chest. Her heart pounded, but it wasn't from the excitement of the celebration. Her gaze was fixed on the screen, on All Might's smiling face. Her mind raced, the meaning behind those words crashing over him like a tidal wave. All Might's time, it was over. He can't use One For All anymore. Izuku's hands trembled at his sides, and before he could stop himself, tears began to fall. They rolled down her cheeks in a silent stream, hot against the cool of his skin. Her chest felt tight, his heart aching in a way that he couldn't explain. He hadn't fully understood until this moment. All Might wasn't just passing the torch to the next generation. He was gone. The One For All legacy would never be the same. The hero who had protected this world for so long, who had inspired millions, would no longer be the one to stand against the darkness. Izuku wiped at his face, but the tears kept coming. He could hear Kirishima's voice in the background, excited and jubilant, but all Izuku could focus on was the emptiness that now surrounded All Might. She hadn't known what it would be like, how it would feel to see his hero at the end of his journey. All Might had always been so strong, so invincible in her eyes, a constant beacon in a world of chaos. And now he was finished. Izuku's chest heaved as she tried to steady her breathing. Her eyes focused on the screen once again, watching as All Might's figure slowly faded into the distance. The citizens celebrated, but Izuku couldn't bring herself to feel the same way. The message All Might had left behind, his declaration that it was now their turn, made Izuku realize something else: she was next in line. The weight of it all was too much, and as she stood there, surrounded by her classmates and the growing noise of the celebration, she couldn't hold back the sobs any longer. All Might had saved them all for so long. But now it was her turn to carry on his legacy. The glow of the screen still lingered in Midoriya's mind as the group finally began to move again. Her hands were still trembling slightly, but she forced herself to focus. There wasn't time to break down, not now. Not while there were still things to do. Katsuki walked ahead of them, arms crossed, jaw tight. He hadn't said much since the escape. Not a thank you, not a word of concern. Typical. But Midoriya could see the tension in his shoulders, the same kind she'd seen in the hospital mirror, etched into her own reflection. At the police checkpoint, officers were already waiting. Dozens of them, some bandaged, some armed, and all looking tired. As Bakugo stepped forward, one of the officers saluted him with uncharacteristic solemnity. "You did well holding out, kid," the officer said gruffly. Bakugo scowled but didn't protest. "I would have broken out on my own anyway." Midoriya and the others gave their statements briefly. Ida handled most of it with his usual sense of order and responsibility, while Kirishima hovered nearby, casting sidelong glances at Bakugo like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Momo quietly offered clarification where needed. It felt strange, detached almost, to be standing here like everything was normal when the world had just shifted under their feet. As the officers took Bakugo to a nearby patrol car, not under arrest but for protection, he glanced back. Just a flicker of his eyes, a spark of something unspoken. Midoriya met it with her own. She didn't smile. Neither did he. But in that brief moment there was an understanding. A quiet one. When the patrol car pulled away, Kirishima exhaled deeply, rubbing the back of his neck. "Man, that was intense." "Indeed," Ida said, adjusting his glasses. "But we completed the mission. More or less." "Without fighting," Momo added softly. "Just like we promised." They started walking. No one said much at first. The streets were beginning to quiet down, the post-battle chaos slowly settling into something closer to peace. The adrenaline was wearing off, and in its place came exhaustion. Midoriya walked a little behind the group, arms wrapped around herself. The wind caught in her short, messy hair and she tugged her jacket tighter. Her body still ached in places and her thoughts were loud, too loud. All Might was done. Kaken was safe. And now it was her turn. She glanced up at the sky as they crossed an intersection. The stars were out. Faint, scattered, but visible. And somehow, in the stillness, it felt like they were watching too. They walked until the streetlights guided them home. The apartment door creaked open as Izuku stepped inside, the familiar scent of home wrapping around her like a blanket. Her limbs felt heavy, her chest still tight from everything that had happened. She barely managed to toe off her shoes before, "Izuku," her mother's voice came sharp and fast, and then Inko was rushing down the hall in her pajamas, eyes wide and brimming with tears. "Oh my God, baby." "I'm okay, Mom," Izuku said quickly, lifting her hands. "I'm fine. Really." Inko stopped in front of her, hands hovering over Izuku's shoulders as if unsure whether to hold her or not. "You're not okay. You were in the middle of that whole thing. I saw you on the news, I thought." Her voice cracked. "I thought you were going to." "I didn't fight," Izuku interrupted softly. "We just rescued Kaken. We were careful, I promise." Her mother stared at her for a moment, then pulled her into a fierce hug anyway. Izuku stiffened at first, her bruises still fresh, but then melted into it. The warmth of her mother's arms, the heartbeat beneath her ear, it was the safest she'd felt in days. "I'm just glad you're home," Inko whispered. "You're home?" Izuku nodded against her shoulder. "I'm sorry I didn't call sooner." "You're here now." Inko pulled back, brushing green bangs from her daughter's face. "Go get some sleep, sweetheart. We'll talk in the morning, okay?" "Okay," Izuku murmured. She made her way down the hall, pushing her bedroom door open. The room looked exactly the same as she'd left it, but somehow, smaller. Like she'd grown too much for it in just one night. Peeling off her jacket, she dropped it over her chair, then climbed into bed. The moment her head hit the pillow, her body gave out completely. The ache in her muscles, the weight in her heart, it all sank deep into the mattress. She curled on her side, staring at the wall, her mind a quiet storm of images, explosions, black portals, Kaken's smirk, All Might's final stand, and that final message meant only for her. "Next it's your turn." Izuku closed her eyes. And slept. The room was silent, lit only by the faint glow of the moon seeping through her curtains. Izuku had been drifting, somewhere between sleep and dreams, when the sharp buzz of her phone cut through. The stillness. She groaned softly, reaching over with a sluggish arm to grab it from the nightstand. The screen read All Might. Her heart kicked up. She sat up quickly, eyes clearing as she pressed accept. "All Might." His voice was quiet, heavy. "Young Midoriya. I'm sorry to call so late." Izuku immediately straightened in bed. "It's okay. I mean I wasn't really sleeping yet." There was a pause. "Could you meet me?" he asked. "At the beach. The place where we trained." Izuku blinked. That beach. The one still etched into her memory, where the old her and the hero she was becoming first began to merge. "Yeah. I'll be there soon." "Thank you." The call ended. Izuku stared at the screen for a moment longer before slipping out of bed, her tiredness replaced by something else, something quieter but heavier. She dressed quickly, pulled on a hoodie, and tiptoed out of the apartment with a quiet note left for her mother on the kitchen counter. The city was hushed at this hour, streets empty, shadows stretched long. She walked quickly, each step crunching softly on the sidewalk until she reached the familiar path. The beach appeared before her like a ghost from the past. Quiet waves, the moonlight shimmering over sand. And there he was, waiting. Tall. One. Human. Not as All Might, the symbol of peace, but as Toshinori Yagi, her mentor. Izuku stepped onto the sand, wind catching in her hair. "I'm here." He turned when she approached and his eyes, though tired, were sharp. "Young Midoriya," he said, and for a second, there was something almost unreadable in his voice. Before Izuku could respond, he stepped forward and punched her lightly in the shoulder, not enough to hurt, but enough to make her stumble back a step. "What were you thinking?" he barked, the reprimand snapping through the cool night air. Izuku flinched. I Kaken was, I told you to stay out of it," he interrupted, eyes flashing with that rare old intensity. "You're my successor, not a martyr. That battlefield was no place for a student and especially not for you, Not when you were already hurt. His shoulders trembled slightly from the force of his words. Then he coughed hard, clutching his side. His skeletal form shuddered. All Might. Izuku reached out instinctively, worry overtaking her guilt. I'm fine, he rasped. But I'm done. Officially. She froze. I used everything I had left in that last punch, All Might said, lifting his gaze to meet hers. I can't even hold the form for more than a few seconds now. That was the last time All Might will ever fight. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Izuku looked down, her hands clenched at her sides. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I wasn't supposed to. But I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Not when it was Kaken. Toshinori sighed. You are just like me, he murmured. Before she could ask what he meant, he reached forward and pulled her into a hug, tight and trembling and full of everything he couldn't put into words. I was furious, he said into her hair. But then I saw you, all of you, safe. And I felt nothing but pride. You saved him. You made it back. You were brave. Izuku's breath caught in her throat. You're growing up too fast, he said with a small laugh, pulling back to look at her. Even if your body's changed, even if everything feels upside down right now, I know who you are. He placed a thin hand over her heart. You're still Midoriya Izuku. The same kid who cried over All Might videos. The same kid who leapt in to save a boy from a villain without thinking. The same young hero who wants to save everyone with a smile. Her lip trembled, eyes stinging again. I'm sorry I worried you, she said. But I'm still me. I won't forget that. I know you won't. All Might smiled, tired but warm. And now it's your time. I can't fight anymore. But I'll stand behind you, every step of the way. The tide rolled in, washing the sand clean. And beneath the moonlight, mentor and student stood side by side, one at his end, the other just beginning. It was the following day when All Might visited their apartment. You had already sent a letter explaining everything, the dorm system, the plan to move the students for their safety. So Izuku and her mom were expecting a conversation, just not like this. All Might came alone. Izuku could barely sit still. Her heart was racing, All Might in their home drinking tea with her mom. He looked so big in their small living room. He glanced around quietly, his eyes pausing on her posters, the All Might action figures, the scribbled notebooks filled with hero notes. It was embarrassing, but also kind of nice. Then her mom spoke. I'm pulling Izuku out of you, eh? The words hit like a punch to the chest. Izuku froze. I've watched my child come home with broken bones and burns, Inko said, voice trembling. She idolizes you. And I'm terrified it's going to get her killed. Izuku couldn't speak. She stood up and hurried to her room, thoughts spiraling. Her chest felt tight. She thought back to the battles, the pain, the time she'd smiled through cracked ribs just so her mom wouldn't worry. She hadn't really listened to her mom's fears, not until now. Inside her room, she stood there for a moment, staring at the walls covered in All Might memorabilia. The weight of everything crashed down on her all at once. All Might's retirement, her injuries, the pressure of One for All, and now this. A quiet sob escaped her before she wiped her eyes and dug into her drawer. She came back holding Koda's letter. I saved someone, she said quietly. Even if I didn't have a hero license or a fancy title. Even like this, she glanced down at her body, still not quite used to it. I still did what I had to do. That's what heroes do. All Might stood. Then without a word he transformed into his muscle form and bowed low. I've let harm come to your daughter. I failed to protect her, he said, voice deep and steady. But I believe in her. I believe she can be the next symbol of peace. His form flickered back to normal. He looked tired, but full of resolve. I promise to guide her. Not down a bloodied path, but to a future where she can stand tall. I'll give everything I have to help her become the hero she's meant to be. Inko's breath caught. Then she dropped to her knees, tears spilling. Live All Might. Live and be there for her. I will, he said softly. She turned to Izuku and held her hand tight. Go back. But promise me you won't make me cry like this again. I promise, Izuku whispered, voice shaking. I'll get stronger. I'll make you proud. This time they faced the future together. Izuku sniffled and smiled through her tears as her mom hugged her again, tighter this time, as if trying to make up for every worry and sleepless night. Later that evening she found herself back in her room, suitcase half-packed and clothes scattered like confetti. She folded her UA uniform with practiced care, slipped her notebooks into the side pocket, and paused as she picked up a faded All Might keychain. She smiled faintly, clutching it in her hand before clipping it to the zipper. A knock came at the door. "Come in," she said, brushing hair out of her face. Her mom peeked in, holding a small laundry basket of freshly folded socks and underwear. "I brought the rest of your—" "Oh wow, this room is a war zone." "It's organized chaos," Izuku muttered, stuffing a hoodie into the bag. "Controlled disaster. Totally under control." Inko walked in, placed the laundry on the bed and then just hovered. Izuku could feel it. That mom energy. Something was coming. Sure enough, Inko sat down slowly, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. "Sweetie," she began far too gently. "Now that you're, a girl?" Izuku froze mid-sock roll. "Okay. I just think it's important we have a little talk. About boys." Izuku's face lit up bright red. No, listen, it's different now." Inko pressed on, suddenly in full, embarrassing mom mode. "I mean, you've always been cute, but now you're adorable and teenage boys are like cats around tuna. You need to be careful. Don't fall for the first handsome face you see just because he says something nice like, 'You smell like flowers' or 'Your eyes sparkle like Midoriya rain.' That's not even a thing." Izuku wailed, hiding her face in a sweatshirt. "It is now." Inko pointed dramatically. "I raised you to be strong, kind, and smart, not to get distracted by chiseled jawlines and six-packs, okay? No kissing during training. No secret midnight rendezvous under the stars. And if Bakugo even looks at you the wrong way, call me. I will come running." Izuku groaned into the pile of clothes. "This is worse than facing Stain." Inko sniffled dramatically. "I knew this would happen. Do I just switch teams and now I'm back at square one?" "I am not having this conversation," Izuku squeaked. But even as she said it, she was smiling again, really smiling. Her mom was being ridiculous, but it made her feel normal, grounded. Like the world hadn't completely turned upside down. Like home would always be here, even as she stepped into the unknown. Inko stood and smoothed her daughter's hair gently. "I'm proud of you, Izuku. Now go be amazing. Just, with chaste heroism." "No promises," Izuku mumbled under her breath, earning a gasp of betrayal. She zipped her suitcase with a grin and slung her backpack over one shoulder. It was time to go home. To you, to herself. To the future. It should have felt exciting. Moving into their new dorms, a fresh start after everything that happened. That's what you, intended. But as Class 1A stood outside the newly built Heights Alliance, lined up in neat little rows with luggage at their feet, the air felt heavier than any of them expected. Midoriya stood among them, heart beating just a little faster. She recognized the look on Aizawa-sensei's face. It wasn't just tired, it was disappointed. And that always hit harder than anger. "This dormitory will be your new home," he began, voice steady. "You'll be living under supervision going forward. This is a precaution, not a reward." Some of the students exchanged glances, but most stayed quiet. Midoriya kept her eyes forward. "But before I go over how this will work," Aizawa said, pausing just long enough to make her stomach twist, "we need to talk about what happened during the training camp." Her fingers tightened at her sides. "You were supposed to earn your provisional hero licenses there. That opportunity was lost when the League of Villains attacked." Midoriya didn't miss the subtle shift, how Kaminari's shoulders slumped, how Uraraka's lips parted like she wanted to say something but didn't. They were all still holding on to what they didn't get. The licenses. The normalcy. "And yet," Aizawa continued, "some of you acted like you had them anyway." The moment his voice changed, she knew what was coming. Todoroki, Kirishima, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Ida. The names fell like stone. Her name. Her friends. Their secret dragged into the open. "I know what you did. I know you left campus, tracked the League, and went to rescue Bakugo." Gasps echoed. A chorus of disbelief. "You what?" Mina shrieked. "You seriously continued to that plan?" Zero whispered. Midoriya didn't move. She didn't look at anyone. She could feel the weight of their eyes, the swirl of betrayal and awe in the air. She didn't blame them. Aizawa wasn't done. It was reckless. Dangerous. You had no authority, no license, and no backup. But no one died. Your efforts were buried. Covered up. He exhaled slowly. But aside from Bakugo, Hagakure, and Jiro, the rest of you knew. You didn't stop them. You didn't say a word. Another silence, heavier than before. Guilt began spreading through the crowd like smoke. Midoriya could feel it, on her skin, in her chest. "If All Might hadn't retired," Aizawa said, voice like steel, "I would have expelled every single one of you. You betrayed the rules we built this school on. She felt her heart squeeze. Then he turned back to her group, the 5 of them who had disobeyed, who had done what they thought was right. Todoroki, Kirishima, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Ida. You acted to save your friend, and I won't say that wasn't admirable. But next time, go through the proper procedures. Trust must be rebuilt, by following the law you're training to uphold. Midoriya swallowed hard. She nodded once, hand curled at her side. She could feel Ida beside her doing the same. Aizawa stepped aside. That's all. Go inside. No one moved. They just stood there, stunned, like they were waiting for someone to breathe for them. Then a familiar voice broke the silence. Hey, idiot. Zap. Electricity cracked through the air. Kaminari spasmed dramatically. Gwa-ha, ha. His eyes went wide and blank, tongue lolling out like a cartoon character. Bakugo stood behind him, arms crossed, glaring like he hadn't just turned his classmate into a walking battery leak. You all looked like you were about to cry, he muttered. So I fixed it. Jiru snorted. You electrocuted him. I feel electricity in friendship, Kaminari murmured, swaying like a zombie. Laughter rippled through the crowd, first tentative then real. Even Midoriya couldn't help a little laugh bubbling up through her chest. For a second it felt like before. Then Kirishima stepped forward. He rubbed the back of his neck, cheeks pink. I messed up. I thought I was being manly. Doing what a hero's supposed to do. But I forgot, heroes don't act alone. We're supposed to have each other's backs. So, he turned to Bakugo and Bakugo held out cash. Paying you back for the night vision scope. Bakugo interrupted Kirishima. Kirishima hesitated but took it without argument. Kirishima looked back at the class. I'll make it up to you guys. Seriously. Barbecue's on me this weekend. Meat, soda, all of it. I owe you at least that much. There was a beat. Yes. Mina cheered. We accept your apology. Zero added. Grill forgiveness. Kaminari drooled. Laughter erupted again, louder this time, brighter. Midoriya watched it all with a soft smile, the tension slowly fading from her shoulders. Things still weren't perfect. They had a long way to go. But maybe, just maybe, they'd be okay. Midoriya let out a breath as she collapsed onto her freshly made bed, the springs creaking softly beneath her. Her dorm room was simple but cozy, walls bare for now, her all-might blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed, notebooks stacked in one corner, each one filled with observations and battle notes. A few photos were pinned up, her mom, her class, Ida and Ochako at the sports festival. It didn't quite feel like home yet. But it didn't feel like you, either. She exhaled again, deeper this time. The confrontation with Aizawa-sensei still echoed in her head. Everyone's reactions. The disappointment. The guilt. A knock at the door made her jolt upright. She scrambled to her feet, brushing off her skirt. See, come in. The door cracked open. Uraraka peeked in. Hey Deku. You, got a minute? Midoriya blinked, then nodded quickly. Yeah, of course. Come in. Uraraka stepped inside, glancing around at the room with a warm little smile. Wow, it really is your room. Feels like you. All Might blanket and everything. Midoriya rubbed the back of her neck, blushing. Why yeah, I guess I'm kind of predictable. There was a pause. Then Uraraka sat on the edge of the bed, her smile fading just a little. So, that whole thing. What Aizawa-sensei said. Midoriya looked down, fidgeting with her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to drag everyone into it. I couldn't let Kaken be taken. And when I saw that you, everyone, was upset or suspicious, I thought maybe you'd try to stop us or worse, come with us. And I couldn't risk that. Uraraka didn't respond right away. Then, softly, I was mad. Midoriya flinched. I was mad, because I knew something was up. I watched you all sneak around, whispering, making plans. And I didn't say anything. Because part of me understood. And part of me wanted to go with you. She looked up, eyes shining a little. But seeing you come back safe, seeing how close it all was, scared me, Deku. Really scared me. Midoriya's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Uraraka shook her head. I'm not saying this to make you feel worse. I just wanted you to know how I felt. And that I'm still your friend. Midoriya's eyes widened. Even after. Uraraka gave a half laugh. You saved Bakugo without getting yourself killed. That's kind of incredible. And very you. I'm still mad, but I'm also proud. Midoriya smiled just a little. Her eyes shimmered. Thanks, Uraraka. There was a pause. Then Uraraka raised a brow. So what's it like? Midoriya blinked. What's what like? Uraraka leaned in with a mischievous glint in her eyes. So, you're a girl now and you saved Bakugo again. Be honest, did he act different? I bet he was trying so hard not to smile. Midoriya went bright red. Uraraka. She snorted. What? Come on, I saw his face when you showed up. Dude looked like someone turned off his rage mode. It wasn't like that. Midoriya stammered, clutching the strap of her sling tighter. He was just surprised. That's all. Oh please, Uraraka said, waving her hand. Bakugo's been weirdly chill around you ever since you changed. Like not yelling every 5 seconds. That's practically flirting for him. Midoriya's jaw dropped. He is not. That's not. Uraraka burst into giggles, holding up her hands. I'm kidding. Mostly. Midoriya groaned, burying her face in her good hand. It's different, complicated, confusing. I still don't really know how long it'll last or if I'll ever go back to normal. Uraraka tilted her head. Does that bother you? I don't know, Midoriya said softly. Some things feel harder. But others feel easier in a strange way. People treat me differently. He treats me differently. That's not necessarily a bad thing, Uraraka said gently, her teasing smile fading into something more thoughtful. Maybe it's just letting you both see things clearer. Midoriya didn't answer right away. She just stared out the window, heart doing a strange little flutter. Then her grin returned, sly and sharp. And it's not just him either. Midoriya blinked. What? Please? Uraraka said, nudging her. Todoroki's been sticking to you like Velcro. You didn't notice. What? No, he hasn't. Midoriya squeaked, flustered. He has, Uraraka sang. Since you changed, he's been a lot more present. Like standing a little closer, talking a little more, watching a lot more. Midoriya's brain went blank. He's just worried. About Bakugo. About the mission. About, Uraraka hummed. He's worried with a little heart eyes emoji energy. Midoriya hid her face again. You're the worst. I'm your best friend, she corrected smugly. And I'm just saying if you ever need backup navigating the hot boy triangle you've accidentally walked into, I've got charts. I am not in a triangle. Sure, Uraraka said, patting her shoulder. Just keep me posted when Todoroki finally holds your hand or Bakugo tries to kill him for it. I hate everything you're saying right now. Midoriya red as a tomato. But she was smiling because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all that far-fetched. Uraraka's teasing faded into something more thoughtful. Well, for what it's worth, you're still you. And you're doing great. Midoriya's heart warmed. Thanks. They sat in silence for a few seconds before Uraraka clapped her hands. Anyway, come on, we're all gathering in the lounge in a bit. Shiro said something about a soda tower and Kaminari's already stacking cans. Midoriya stood, smiling. Sounds like them. As they stepped out into the hallway together, side by side, the dorm suddenly felt a little less strange. And a little more like home. Midoriya and Uraraka strolled side by side down the hallway toward the dorm elevator, the soft thud of their steps echoing against the quiet. The tension of the day had eased a little, and even though Midoriya still felt the weight of Aizawa's words clinging to her shoulders, she was starting to breathe easier. Until he showed up. Oi. They both stopped. The word cut sharp and low like gravel ground underfoot. Bakugo stood just ahead of them, leaning against the wall near the elevator with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. His red eyes flicked toward Uraraka briefly before locking on Midoriya. I need to talk to you. Midoriya blinked. Now. Yeah. You got ears, don't you? Uraraka frowned, already stepping a bit protectively in front of Midoriya. You sure this can't wait, Bakugo? She just got settled in. It's not your business, round face. Uraraka scowled. What did you just? Midoriya gently put a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. I'll catch up with you. Uraraka hesitated, clearly unconvinced. Her gaze lingered on Bakugo for a beat, narrowed with suspicion. Fine. But don't yell at her, got it? Tisich. As Uraraka walked away, throwing one last pointed glare over her shoulder, Midoriya turned to face Bakugo, already feeling that familiar mix of anxiety and curiosity fluttering in her chest. He didn't move. Didn't even uncross his arms. Just stared at her like she was something he hadn't figured out yet, and didn't like that he hadn't. You changed. Midoriya blinked. Well, yeah. That's sort of, obvious. I don't mean that, he snapped. I mean you're different. She flinched. Because of the Quirk accident. No. Because of how you acted back there. At Kamino. Her breath hitched. I saw what you did. I know it was your DMN idea. Midoriya looked down, fingers curling into her sleeves. I had to. They were taking you and I didn't ask to be saved by a bunch of idiots sneaking around like vigilantes. She bit her lip. I know. There was a pause. Long tense. But you still came. Midoriya glanced up, startled. His tone wasn't bitter this time. Just resigned. You almost died. You almost got everyone killed. But you still came. She nodded, heart thudding. That's what heroes do, she whispered. Bakugo studied her, jaw clenched. His eyes flicked briefly down to her, then away again, like looking at her too long might set something off inside him. Don't do that again, he muttered. Next time ask. Next time trust people. Don't shoulder everything and act like some martyr. Midoriya blinked, eyes wide. That almost sounded like advice. Or maybe worry. Kakin. He looked away. And don't think this changes anything. You're still a nerd. Just a girl nerd now. She laughed, a short, surprised burst that caught even her off guard. Okay. He gave her a sharp glance, then pushed past her toward the elevator. I'm going to the lounge. If you're late, I'm eating your snacks. Wah. Eh. But he didn't wait. The elevator doors closed behind him, leaving her standing there with a fluttering heart and a bemused smile. Maybe Bakugo wasn't ready to say what he really felt. But she heard him anyway. Midoriya caught the next elevator down, adjusting her sleeves nervously as it hummed to a stop on the common room floor. She could already hear the noise before the doors slid open. Laughter, clinking cans, and Kaminari's voice shouting something about structural integrity. She stepped into the lounge just in time to see Kaminari and Ciro precariously balancing a stack of soda cans, glued together with Minetta's sticky purple hairballs. Behold! Ciro declared, arms raised dramatically. The Great Tower of Grape. Minetta sat on the couch looking utterly betrayed. I said you could use 2. Not 12. These things don't grow back instantly, you know. Kaminari grinned proudly. Science demands sacrifice. The tower wobbled. Then collapsed. Splush. Half the lounge was sprayed with soda. Everyone burst into chaos. Todoroki silently handed Jiro a towel, Kirishima howled with laughter, and Aoyama twirled dramatically out of range like a glittery ballet dancer avoiding a splash zone. Midoriya couldn't help it, she laughed. Not the nervous kind. A real relieved from the chest laugh. Tsuchan waved from the couch and patted the cushion beside her. Midoriya-chan. Come sit with me before you get dragged into the next disaster. Midoriya made her way over, dodging a sticky puddle of cola as she sat down beside Azui. The frog girl gave her a soft smile. It's good to see you laugh again, Ribbit. Thanks, Midoriya said quietly. It's good to be here. Everyone really was here, Kirishima, Bakugo brooding by the window but not leaving, Uraraka chatting with Jiro, Momo and Ida politely trying to organize a cleanup, even Aoyama offering someone a sparkling napkin. For a moment, despite the tension earlier in the day, it felt normal. Then Mina Ashido clapped her hands together with a wicked grin. Okay. New idea. She announced, leaping onto a coffee table like a pink whirlwind of energy. Now that we're all dorm buddies, I say we make this official, with a competition. Competition? Kaminari asked, still dripping soda. Mina beamed. Best room contest. Duh. Everyone blinked. Uraraka tilted her head. Like, who decorated their room the best? Exactly. Mina said, hands on her hips. Cuteness, coolness, personal flair. Points for sparkle and creativity. We rate each other's rooms and the winner gets, she paused dramatically. A week of snack DLVRY from the losers. That's extortion, Jiro said flatly. I accept this challenge. Aoyama declared, already glowing. Does it have to be clean? Ciro muttered. Kirishima's grin widened. All right. I'm game. Even Bakugo raised a brow, mumbling something like, my room's fine. Whatever. Midoriya blinked. Wait, are we seriously doing this? She looked around. Everyone was suddenly animated, excited. Even Momo, despite her initial hesitation, seemed intrigued. And despite everything that had happened, it felt kind of nice. Normal. Silly. Like teenagers in a dorm. Not future heroes on the brink of war. Sue leaned closer to her. You're entering, right? Midoriya flushed. I mean, if everyone is, Ashido pointed a dramatic finger. Then it's settled. The best room showdown starts tomorrow. Prepare your lairs, my fellow heroes. Groans and laughter echoed through the lounge. Midoriya looked around at all of them, her friends, her classmates, her weird, wonderful team, and for the first time in a long while, the tightness in her chest eased just a little. Maybe, just maybe, this dorm life wouldn't be so bad. The lounge was buzzing with energy as Class 1A gathered, excitement hanging thick in the air. Everyone was there, some chatting, others already glancing at their phones while a few exchanged quiet whispers. The energy from earlier had returned, and the competition to determine whose room was the best was about to begin. Midoriya stood by the couch, nervously fidgeting with her sleeve as she glanced around. It felt like everyone had been looking forward to this all day, some more seriously than others. It was clear there was no avoiding it now. A loud thud echoed from the kitchen, followed by Bakugo's irritated voice. Can you all shut up already? We don't have all night. Uraraka raised an eyebrow at Midoriya and gave a small smile. Well, at least it's not going to be boring, huh? Midoriya chuckled softly. Yeah, no kidding. The group slowly settled down, some of them standing in a loose circle as Ishido took charge. She grabbed a nearby piece of paper and waved it around dramatically. All right. Let's make this fair. Mina announced. We'll start with the boys' rooms, but the ladies will judge first. Got it? The group murmured in agreement as Ishido, with a flourish, checked her official clipboard, which was scribbled with all sorts of notes. Let's go, she said with a wide grin already bouncing toward the hallway. Midoriya followed behind, slightly unsure but curious to see what kind of chaos awaited them in the boys' rooms. They reached the first stop, Bakugo's room. Ishido knocked twice and kicked the door open without waiting for a response. Bakugo was already leaning against his desk, his arms crossed, eyes narrowed as though daring them to step inside. Oi, quit standing there and get in already. Uraraka gave a grin. Well, you were the one who said to hurry up, Bakugo. They entered, Midoriya trailing just behind. Bakugo's room was, much to her surprise, surprisingly neat. The bed was perfectly made, the floor clear of any clutter, and the desk, though covered with a few hero-related materials, was organized. The walls were adorned with All Might posters, some of them framed, while others were hastily taped up. There were also several action figures and various hero gadgets on the shelves, including a small trophy from a recent class competition. This is actually pretty clean, Uraraka said, taking a quick look around. I was expecting explosives or something, but it's pretty orderly in here. Bakugo snorted. It's a hero's room, not some mess hall. What did you expect? More explosive design, Ishido teased, hopping onto his bed and throwing herself onto the neatly folded covers, ignoring the fact that she was probably crumpling them. Where's all the personality? I mean, it's just like tough and serious everywhere. Don't mess it up, Bakugo grumbled. I'm not some decorator, all right? Midoriya hesitated but spoke up. It feels like you, Kaken. It's kind of like your Quirk in a way. Bakugo raised an eyebrow but didn't retort. Instead, he folded his arms tighter and looked away, muttering something under his breath. Tisich, whatever. Jiru scribbled something on her clipboard. Alright, it's got that strong and silent vibe. Definitely not winning most fun, though. But there's definitely something here. Next up was Kirishima's room, and the mood shifted quickly as they arrived at his door. It was already wide open, and Kirishima was waiting by the entrance with a big, welcoming smile. Yo everyone. Ready to see my epic room. Midoriya blinked as she stepped inside. Kirishima's room was a burst of energy. His walls were covered in posters of pro heroes, particularly those with flashy, action-packed battle scenes. There were inspirational quotes scattered around too, all in bold, punchy fonts, along with a large rock collection on his windowsill. His desk was cluttered, but in a way that seemed oddly charming. Half of it looked like it belonged in a science lab with strange rocks and tools, and the other half was filled with energy drink cans and snacks. This is so you, Kirishima, Momo said with a laugh. It's loud, bold, and full of life. Kirishima grinned, puffing his chest out. You bet. It's gotta be me, right? If my room doesn't make you feel pumped up, I'm doing it wrong. Midoriya smiled. It's definitely got a lot of personality. It feels strong. Kirishima's grin widened at that, clearly pleased by the compliment. Exactly. I want to feel motivated every time I come in here. Ishido made a note. I think it's gonna get top marks for most energetic room. There's a lot going on, but it's all Kirishima. After visiting Bakugo and Kirishima's rooms, they made their way to the almost final stop in the boys' section, the room of the quietest member of their class, Todoroki. When they knocked, the door was already ajar. Todoroki stood near the window, his back turned, staring out into the hallway as if he were contemplating something. The room felt much quieter, calmer, almost stark in its simplicity. The walls were bare except for a couple of family photos. His desk was neat, and his bed, although not as perfectly made as Bakugo's, was still orderly. "This feels peaceful," Hagakure said softly as she stepped inside. "It's, serene." Todoroki glanced over his shoulder. "I don't like clutter." "That's clear," Ashido teased, sitting down on the bed and bouncing a little. Midoriya nodded. "It's quiet. Feels like you." Calm, reserved. Todoroki gave a single nod but didn't say anything further. He didn't seem bothered by the inspection, which was the most important part, but his room definitely gave off a much different vibe than the others. Azui scribbled down something on her clipboard. "Not sure how it'll compete with all the energy rooms, but it's got a certain elegance." As they finished visiting Todoroki's room, the group headed back down the hallway toward the next stop, Sato's room. Unlike the others, there was something a little less loud about Sato's presence. He was always calm, friendly, and hard-working. His room was bound to be just as wholesome. When they knocked, Sato immediately opened the door with a big smile. "Hey everyone. Welcome to my humble abode." He greeted them warmly, standing aside to let them in. Midoriya stepped inside, immediately greeted by the comforting scent of freshly baked goods. Her eyes widened as she looked around. The room was cozy with a neat, almost homey vibe. The walls were lined with shelves of books. Some textbooks but also novels, a few cookbooks, and even a couple of manga volumes. His bed, made neatly with a soft blue comforter, had a few baking magazines scattered around. A small corner of the room was dedicated to his baking supplies, neatly organized with bowls, measuring cups, and bags of flour and sugar. "It smells amazing in here," Uraraka exclaimed, glancing around. "Are you baking something, Sato?" Sato grinned and reached over to a small table near the corner, lifting a delicate cake stand with a chiffon cake on it. The cake was light and airy, topped with a dusting of powdered sugar and fresh strawberries. "I made chiffon cake," Sato said proudly. "I thought it'd be nice to share with everyone. It's a little something to make the room visits even sweeter." The class collectively gasped in delight as he cut slices and handed them out. "Wow, this is incredible," Kirishima said, already digging into his piece. "It's so light. This is way better than any room I've seen so far." "See, I told you Sato's room would be full of comfort," Uraraka said, munching happily on her own slice. "This cake alone might just win most delicious room." Midoriya couldn't help but smile as she took a bite. The cake was perfect, light, fluffy, and just sweet enough. It was the kind of comfort food that made her feel at ease, surrounded by her friends. Sato's room felt like a warm embrace. "You're really talented, Sato," Midoriya said, her voice full of appreciation. Sato blushed a little but gave a modest shrug. "I just enjoy it. Cooking and baking make me feel good, and I wanted to share that with all of you. You've all been so supportive, so I thought I'd bake something to show my thanks." "Well, you definitely succeeded," Ashido said, taking another bite of the cake. "If there was an award for best room based on hospitality, you'd totally win." Sato smiled softly, looking around the room with a sense of pride. "Thanks everyone. I guess I just wanted my room to feel like a place where people could relax. It's nothing flashy, but it's home." Uraraka gave him an exaggerated nod. "I think you nailed it. You've got the most comforting room, hands down." As Sato handed Midoriya a slice of the strawberry chiffon cake, she smiled brightly. "Thanks, Sato. This looks amazing," she said, her voice warm and full of appreciation. The cake was appealing, fresh strawberries on top, a dusting of powdered sugar. It smelled heavenly. As she took a bite, she was immediately struck by the light, airy texture and the sweetness of the fruit. It was delicious, and she found herself savoring every bite. The others were enjoying their cake too, laughing and chatting around her. But then, out of nowhere, she felt a subtle nudge at her side. Midoriya looked up to see Bakugo standing there, arms crossed, his usual scowl in place. "Tch," he muttered, clearly not one for flowery words. "You know, I think your cake's flavor is better than mine." Midoriya blinked in surprise. "Ah, you like my cake more than yours?" Bakugo shrugged, avoiding her gaze, though there was a faint glint in his eyes. "Yeah, whatever. I'll trade you." Midoriya blinked again, more confused this time. "Trade?" Without waiting for an answer, Bakugo snatched her plate and swapped it with his own. "I like the strawberry better. You can have this boring CRP vanilla." Midoriya paused, surprised. "Wait, but you," she started to say, but then it clicked. Bakugo somehow knew that vanilla was her favorite. She laughed softly, feeling a little sheepish. Are you sure, Kakin? Bakugo didn't respond, only grunted as he took a bite of the strawberry cake. Midoriya couldn't help but smile. Well, if you insist, she said, taking a bite of the vanilla chiffon cake that had been swapped with hers. It was light and sweet just the way she liked it. Thanks, Kakin, she said, her voice full of gratitude. He only gave a nonchalant shrug, his attention already back on his cake. Whatever. Just don't expect me to keep swapping with you. Midoriya smiled to herself, feeling a sense of comfort in the small, familiar exchange. She was surprised by how something so simple made her feel even more connected to her classmates. Even though it was just a piece of cake, it felt like a gesture that said a lot more. After their quick stop at Sato's room, everyone made their way to the girls' hallway, ready to check out the rest of the rooms. Midoriya was still feeling the warmth of the cake, but a nervous excitement fluttered in her. She wasn't sure what to expect from the girls' rooms, but she was eager to see where everyone lived. The first stop was Uraraka's room. It was filled with cozy, soft colors. Her bed was piled with plush stuffed animals, and there were papers taped to the walls, with her doodles and some quotes from heroes she admired. Uraraka beamed as they all stepped in, showing off the space with pride. This is my little sanctuary, she said, grinning. It's not much, but I love it here. It's so cute. Momo exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. You really know how to make a space feel welcoming. I love all the stuffed animals, Kirishima added with a grin, reaching out to poke one of the giant plushies. Real soft vibes. But before Midoriya could say anything, Mineta suddenly darted toward the closet in the corner. Ah, this is what I've been waiting for, he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Mineta, don't you dare. Uraraka shouted, but it was too late. He was already trying to stick his nose into her clothes, acting like some kind of creep. Mineta, are you seriously doing this right now? Ida's voice cut through the room, filled with disbelief. His face was a deep shade of red, but his stance was firm. He marched over to Mineta and grabbed him by the collar, pulling him away from the closet. I just wanted to see what kind of clothes she wears, you know. Mineta stammered, his usual pervy grin now replaced with nervousness. Enough, Mineta. Ida scolded, shaking him like a rag doll. We are not here for that kind of behavior. Why yeah? Uraraka added, hands on her hips. We're all friends here. Keep it respectful. The rest of the class nodded in agreement, and Mineta awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, muttering, Fine, I get it. No more snooping around. Thank you, Ida, Midoriya said, giving him a grateful smile. Ida's face softened in return, though he still looked flustered. Of course, Midoriya. It's my duty to protect the class from Mineta's nonsense, Ida replied, straightening his back in that signature, earnest way he always did. Let's just move on, Kirishima said with a wide grin, clearly trying to lighten the mood. The next room, huh? The next room they checked out was Momo's, and it was as elegant and neat as she was. The space was a blend of practicality and beauty, with her study materials neatly organized and the shelves filled with carefully curated items that reflected her high standards. Everyone complimented her on how well she kept everything in order, and even Mineta, sensing the absence of something to perv on, settled down and behaved for the moment. Thanks everyone, Momo said, laughing lightly. I do my best to keep everything in order. It helps me stay focused. Once they finished admiring Momo's space, the group moved on to the last stop of the day, Midoriya's room. All right, Midoriya, your turn, Ashido said, practically bouncing as they all crowded in front of her door. Midoriya hesitated a moment before opening it. She wasn't quite sure what her room would say about her, but she was excited to show it to everyone. She pushed the door open, revealing a space filled with posters of heroes, including a few of All Might, some scattered notebooks filled with notes and sketches, and a carefully organized bookshelf filled with all her study materials. A little desk in the corner was stacked with her latest hero analysis work. There was a comfortable, almost minimalist feel to the room, but it had personal touches, like a small shelf with a few souvenirs from her past adventures and training. This is nice, Midoriya, Uraraka said as she stepped inside, her eyes bright with curiosity. It's simple, Midoriya muttered, rubbing the back of her neck. I don't have as much stuff as some of you, but it works. This is so you, Momo said, giving her a warm smile. You've put a lot of thought into it. Then, without warning, Mineta slipped up beside Midoriya, leaning in a little too close. So, he started with a sly grin, since you became a girl, where'd you buy your underwear? I bet you got some cute stuff, huh? The air seemed to freeze in that moment. Midoriya's face went bright red and she stammered, W. Before she could even gather herself, a few voices came to her defense. Teach, Bakugo growled from behind her, his voice low but unmistakable in its threat. If you say one more thing like that, I'm gonna make sure you can't walk for a week, Mineta. Mineta froze, his usual bravado draining from his face as Bakugo's fiery gaze bore into him. Todoroki's voice was calm, but there was a subtle edge to it. I think we've all had enough of that, Mineta. Ida stepped forward, hands clenched into fists, his expression full of righteous fury. This is a place of mutual respect. How dare you speak like that to Midoriya? Even Kirishima's usual laid-back attitude had disappeared, replaced by a protective glare. That's not cool, man. Back off. Mineta, now visibly intimidated by the combined force of their glares, held his hands up in surrender. Wait. I was just joking, you're not funny, Bakugo snapped, crossing his arms. Keep that CRP to yourself. Midoriya, though embarrassed, felt a warmth in her chest. She glanced at her friends, no, her classmates, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They were all here for her and they wouldn't let anyone cross the line. Thanks, guys, Midoriya said quietly, her voice full of appreciation. Don't worry about it, Kirishima said with his usual easy grin, clapping her on the back. We've got your back always. With that, the group moved on, the tension fading. Midoriya couldn't help but smile, feeling like her place in Class 1A was becoming more solid with every moment they spent together. After everyone had finished touring each other's rooms, they made their way back to the common room, gathering together in a loose circle. The energy was lighter now, laughing, teasing, and generally having fun as they all took their places on the couches and chairs. Alright, time for the official vote. Uraraka said, clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. We'll each vote for who we think has the best and worst room. You can't vote for your own room though. Fair game. Midoriya, still feeling a little embarrassed about the whole room tour thing, shrugged but smiled. She'd really enjoyed seeing everyone's spaces and she was curious about who would win. I'm voting for Sato, Momo said, grinning. He had the most edible room. She winked at him, causing him to chuckle. I second that, Kirishima said, pointing a thumb toward Sato. Chiffon cake wins everything, man. Sato's face turned a little pink from all the attention. Ah, thanks, everyone, but you're making me embarrassed now. I vote for Uraraka. Mineta piped up, his grin mischievous. Her room was, full of good vibes. He was clearly trying to keep the peace after his earlier misstep with Midoriya. I'm voting for Momo, Todoroki said in his usual monotone, though his voice carried the slight warmth that made his vote sound more like an endorsement. The votes went around the room quickly, with everyone pitching in their opinions. But when it came to the final vote, it wasn't a huge surprise when Sato came out on top. Looks like Sato wins the best room. Uraraka cheered, throwing her hands in the air. Congratulations. You get to pick the snacks for the week. Sato's face lit up with a bright smile. Wow. Thanks, everyone. I'll make sure the snacks are the best. But then, a voice piped up from the back of the room. Yeah, good job, Sato, Denki said with a dramatic roll of his eyes. But wait, Sato, don't you think there was some bribery going on with that cake? He was clearly joking, but the playful accusation made everyone laugh. I mean, Sato's room was good, Bakugo cut in with a grunt, but it's hard to argue with cake as a reward. Sato scratched the back of his head, laughing nervously. It wasn't bribery, I swear. I just wanted to share with everyone. Mineta groaned, clearly sulking. Alright, you guys all voted for Sato, so fine. But can we just talk about who has the worst room? Everyone looked toward Mineta as his eyes glinted mischievously. Well, considering someone had their creepy pervy moment, I think we all know who the loser is, Bakugo said, crossing his arms and glaring at Mineta. Mineta's eyes widened in mock innocence. What? He stammered. I didn't do anything that bad. Yeah, you did, Kirishima chimed in, his grin wide as he crossed his arms, and you definitely went snooping around Uraraka's closet. I think we all agree that someone's room wasn't just the worst, it was also a little inappropriate, Todoroki added, his icy voice not giving an inch. Midoriya couldn't help but laugh at how quickly Mineta was getting called out by everyone. She felt a little bad for him, but it was hard to deny that he really didn't do himself any favors today. Alright, Uraraka said, we've got our winner and our loser. So, Mineta, for being the worst room this time, you're on dishwashing duty for the week. Mineta's eyes widened in horror. Wait, what? No. He grabbed the back of his neck, looking utterly defeated. You guys can't be serious. You really shouldn't have been a perv, Mineta, Ida said, his voice sharp. You brought this on yourself. Can't argue with that, Ida added, adjusting his glasses. You've got to face the consequences of your actions. Mineta slumped down on the couch dramatically. This is so unfair. Well, life isn't always fair, Mineta, Kirishima said, clapping him on the back with a friendly grin. But you'll live. And hey, you'll get really good at dishwashing. Exactly, Sato added with a wink. Look on the bright side, you're going to be a dishwashing expert by the end of the week. Ugh, fine, Mineta grumbled, throwing his hands up in mock surrender. I get it, okay. I'll wash the dishes for a week, but you guys owe me. Big time. The room erupted in laughter as Mineta sulked, but there was no doubt that the playful atmosphere was back. It was the usual chaotic yet light-hearted energy that made Class 1A so special. And now, Sato, Uraraka said with a grin, for your victory you get to choose the snacks for the week. No complaints about that, right? No complaints at all, Sato said happily, still a little overwhelmed by all the attention. I'll make sure they're the best snacks ever. As the group chatted and laughed, planning out the snacks for the week, Midoriya leaned back on the couch, feeling grateful for this time with her friends. Despite all the chaos and the mishaps, they really were a family in their own way. She couldn't help but feel a smile tug at her lips. Midoriya hadn't even realized how late it was until Ida suddenly stood up, his posture rigid and authoritative as always. It is now exactly 8:47 p.m., he declared, slicing the air with a sharp karate chop motion. While our room showcase has been productive in strengthening camaraderie, we've yet to address our true obligation for tonight. A collective groan rippled through the group. Ah, come on Ida, Kaminari whined from the couch, flopping dramatically onto Shiro. I just sat down. Ida adjusted his glasses with a gleam that signaled he was not to be stopped. Now that we are living in shared accommodations, we must implement a system for maintaining the common areas in proper order. That includes the kitchen, lounge, hallways, and bathrooms. Midoriya blinked and sat up straighter. Right. They couldn't exactly have 20 teenagers living together and expect things to stay clean on their own. Do we really need to do this now? Mineta muttered, half buried in a beanbag chair. Yes. Ida answered firmly. Organization begins on day 1. I think it's a good idea, Yaoyorozu said, stepping forward with her tablet in hand. And I have a solution that's both efficient and fair. We'll assign responsibilities using a randomized wheel. She tapped her screen, revealing a colorful digital spinner. Wait, you made a wheel. Kaminari leaned over to see. That's amazing. I downloaded it, Yaoyorozu said modestly. But I input all our names and set the algorithm for equal rotation. That's still super extra and I love it, Ashido grinned. Spin that sucker. Let the destiny of dish duty be decided, Shiro intoned dramatically. Yaoyorozu tapped the screen. The wheel jingled cheerfully as names flashed by, and finally landed with a festive ding. Monday's team, Todoroki, Jairu, Kaminari, and Midoriya. Midoriya perked up. Oh, that's not bad. Jairu sighed but gave a thumbs up. Guess I'll bring my playlist. Todoroki just nodded. I don't mind cleaning. I do, Kaminari said. But at least it's not bathroom duty alone. One by one the rest of the week filled out. Tuesday, Kirishima, Hagakure, Mineta, and Uraraka. Wednesday, Aoyama, Shoji, Ashido, and Yaoyorozu. Thursday, Ojiro, Satu, Tokoyami, and Shiro. Friday, Bakugo, Ida, Koda, and Hagakure. Her name spun again since she'd volunteered for a double shift. When Bakugo's name came up, everyone went dead quiet. I'll clean, he muttered. But I'm not picking up anyone's diamond socks. No one asked you to, Shiro said, barely suppressing a laugh. Still gonna scream at the vacuum though, Kaminari whispered to Midoriya. She chuckled under her breath. It was nice, feeling like she belonged here even when things were chaotic. Especially when they were chaotic. And remember, Ida continued, pulling out his notebook like he was running a board meeting, this rotation only applies to shared spaces. Your personal rooms remain your responsibility. Meaning Mineta still has the worst one, Ashido called out, grinning. And Sato still wins snacks for a week, Uraraka added, giving Sato a thumbs up. Denki groaned. That was bribery though. It was cake, Sato shrugged. Good cake. And with that, the final order of business wrapped up. Students began stretching, yawning, peeling off to return to their rooms. Midoriya sat back for a moment, letting the voices swirl around her. The laughter, the teasing, the gentle hum of friendship. This was dorm life. And even with the messes, the chores and the weird competitions, she couldn't help but think it was starting to feel like home. It had been a week since they moved into the dorms, and only a day since training resumed for their provisional licenses. Midoriya's muscles still ached, her notebook was cluttered with sketches and crossed-out ideas, and her thoughts just wouldn't stop spinning. Even as her body begged for rest, her mind was wide awake, tangled in a loop of self-doubt. Was she still trying to imitate All Might? That question haunted her more than she wanted to admit. Even after everything, even after developing shoot style and vowing to stand on her own 2 feet, those words All Might had spoken during their training still echoed loud in her skull. You have to find what only you can do. Midoriya rolled onto her back, staring at the dark ceiling of her dorm room. The glow of her All Might night light felt a little dimmer tonight. Finally she sighed, grabbed her hoodie and notebook and tiptoed out of bed. She wasn't expecting anyone else to be. Had been a week since they moved into the dorms, and only a day since training resumed for their provisional licenses. Midoriya's muscles still ached, her notebook was cluttered with sketches and crossed-out ideas, and her thoughts just wouldn't stop spinning. Even as her body begged for rest, her mind was wide awake, tangled in a loop of self-doubt. Was she still trying to imitate All Might? That question haunted her more than she wanted to admit. Even after everything, even after developing shoot style and vowing to stand on her own 2 feet, those words All Might had spoken during their training still echoed loud in her skull. You have to find what only you can do. Midoriya rolled onto her back, staring at the dark ceiling of her dorm room. The glow of her All Might night light felt a little dimmer tonight. Finally she sighed, grabbed her hoodie and notebook and tiptoed out of bed. She wasn't expecting anyone else to be awake at this hour, definitely not him. The rooftop balcony was quiet, bathed in silver moonlight. The breeze was crisp, brushing against her legs where her pajama shorts left skin bare. She hugged her notebook tighter, letting the wind clear her head, and then she saw him. Todoroki sitting on the far bench, his back half lit by the soft flicker of a flame dancing in his palm. He was dressed down in a loose hoodie and sweatpants, legs crossed casually, expression unreadable. Midoriya froze mid-step. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. He turned, eyes reflecting the low flame. You're not. Couldn't sleep. She shook her head. Too many thoughts. He gave a small nod and looked back to the flickering flame in his hand. Yeah, me too. She hesitated, then stepped closer and slowly sat beside him, not quite touching. From here she could feel the warmth radiating from his hand. It was calming. What are you doing with your fire? She asked. Trying to control the output without letting it flare too hot. His gaze stayed fixed on the flame. It's stupid, but I thought maybe, if I could master this, I'd feel a little more in control of myself. Midoriya smiled faintly. That's not stupid. The silence stretched between them again, comfortable almost, but her heart was beating a little too fast for her to relax. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the moonlight, or the way his voice sounded softer at night. Or maybe it was the way he looked at her then, really looked. I like this version of you, Todoroki said suddenly. Midoriya blinked. Huh. I mean, he glanced away just slightly, but she caught the faint pink rising in his ears. I liked you before too. But now, even with everything changing, you still adapt and be better. That's kind of amazing. Her breath caught. There were 100 responses tumbling around in her head, but none of them made it past her lips. She just stared at him, eyes wide, notebook clutched tight against her chest. Then, wordlessly, Todoroki extended his hand toward her. The small flame still hovered in his palm, casting a soft orange glow. Warmth helps sometimes, he said, voice quiet. If you want. Midoriya hesitated, then slowly placed her fingers over his. The warmth spread through her hand, up her arm, into the tight spaces in her chest she hadn't even realized were cold. And somehow that quiet little gesture said more than either of them could put into words. They stayed like that for a while, 2 tired students under the stars, fire between their hands, hearts racing just a little faster. Midoriya didn't know what would happen tomorrow. But tonight, this was enough to comfort her for a moment. The silence stretched again, longer this time. The wind had picked up a little, brushing through Midoriya's hair and tugging at the pages of her notebook. But she didn't move. She didn't want to break the moment. Todoroki's flame had dimmed to just a flicker in his palm, casting faint shadows across his face. His expression was still unreadable, calm, composed, but his eyes kept flicking to her. Then quietly he shifted closer. His hand gently pulled the notebook from her grasp, setting it aside on the bench. Before she could ask what he was doing, he lifted his arm behind her and guided her head to his shoulder. Midoriya stiffened. Her breath caught somewhere in her throat as her cheek pressed against the soft fabric of his hoodie. She could feel the slow, steady rise and fall of his breathing. The warmth of him. The way his heart wasn't racing, but hers absolutely was. He didn't say anything. He just let her rest there. Maybe he sensed it, how heavy her thoughts were. Maybe he could tell she was tired, not just in her body but in her heart too. Midoriya closed her eyes for a second. This is normal, she told herself. Friends do this. Close friends. We're friends. And yet, even as she repeated that in her head, she couldn't quite believe it. Because she'd never felt this before, this quiet closeness, this heat blooming low in her chest. It was gentle. Unexpected. NTMT in a way that made her feel strangely vulnerable. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she let herself lean into the warmth, allowed her eyes to fall half-lidded as the breeze tugged at her bangs. Todoroki didn't move. He just sat with her like that, grounded and silent, like he was telling her she didn't have to carry everything alone. Not tonight. Not with him here. And for the first time in a while, she felt okay. The smell of miso soup and grilled fish filled the common area that morning. Plates clinked, conversations overlapped, and the mood was refreshingly normal. Class 1A was gathered at the long dining tables, some still half asleep, others energized by the promise of another day of training. Midoriya sat across from Uraraka, who was cheerfully wolfing down her tamagoyaki, while Ida methodically organized the pickled vegetables on his plate like they were on a color-coded grid. Midoriya herself was stirring her rice absent-mindedly, mind still a little hazy, not from lack of sleep but from remembering the rooftop. She hadn't expected Todoroki to speak to her again about it, at least not so soon. But there he was, sliding into the seat beside her with his usual calm, hair still a little damp from the shower. "Good morning," he said. Then just loud enough for her to hear, "How are you feeling? Was last night too hot?" Midoriya blinked, chopsticks pausing mid-air. "Huh." Bakugo's head whipped around from 2 tables down. "What the hell do you mean too hot?" Midoriya flushed a deep red. "No. It's not like that, he was regulating his fire last night and I let him, touch his fire." Kirishima, halfway through a bite of grilled salmon, choked. "Hold up. You let him what?" "It wasn't like that," she cried, waving her hands frantically as her whole face burned. Even Ida froze mid-chew. "Midoriya-kun. I recommend rephrasing," Todoroki, completely unbothered, simply added. "I was helping her relax. It's not uncommon to share warmth when someone's distressed." "Yeah, well maybe don't talk about your freakin' fire-touching therapy in the middle of breakfast." Bakugo snapped, slamming his chopsticks down. "Oh come on," Uraraka laughed though she covered her mouth with her sleeve. "It's not like they were making out on the roof or anything." "That didn't help." Bakugo glared at Todoroki like he was about to throw his rice bowl. "You shouldn't be getting that close to her. That ain't your place." Todoroki calmly turned his head. "And interrupting private conversations isn't yours." Midoriya stared down at her miso soup, wishing she could crawl into it. Why did everything sound way worse than it was? Kirishima, meanwhile, had completely given up holding it together. "Dude. Let him touch his fire." "I can't. Can we please just focus on breakfast?" Midoriya squeaked, burying her face in her hands. Uraraka leaned over and whispered, "Next time maybe don't say things that sound like that." Todoroki, completely unfazed, took a sip of tea. "I thought I phrased it clearly." Ida nodded stiffly. "You phrased it scientifically. That may be the issue." Midoriya sighed deeply into her bowl. One peaceful rooftop talk and now her entire class thought she and Todoroki were fire flirting. And the worst part? She still wasn't sure why Bakugo looked like he was ready to explode. After the absolute chaos of breakfast, the fire comments, Bakugo's near explosion, and Kirishima still laughing about fire touching, Midoriya thought the day couldn't possibly get more embarrassing. But then Ida clapped a firm hand on her shoulder. "Midoriya-kun. You Uraraka-kun, and I should make a trip to the support course today. We need to prepare for the upcoming provisional license training. There's no better time to optimize your hero costume." Uraraka beamed. "Yeah. You've been saying your arms are still taking a beating, right? Maybe Hatsum can help come up with something new." Midoriya blinked. "Oh, right. Hatsum-san," her stomach twisted with nerves. The last time she went to see Mei Hatsum, she walked out of the lab a girl. Literally. Thanks to a quirk-enhancing gadget and a very unfortunate accident with Rento. And here she was still like this. Uraraka must have sensed her hesitation because she leaned in, voice soft. Hey, you okay? You don't have to go if you're uncomfortable. Midoriya shook her head quickly. No, it's fine. I want to go. I need to go. If I don't make some kind of upgrade, my arms are going to fall off next time we train. She tried to sound confident, but her voice cracked a little on fall off. Ida nodded with approval. An excellent mindset, Midoriya-kun. Being proactive is part of a hero's responsibility. So after a quick stop to grab her notes, the three of them headed down toward the development lab, passing the smell of scorched circuits and machine oil before they even opened the door. And then, boom. Something exploded the moment they stepped inside. Smoke puffed from the vents. A spring launched past Uraraka's head. Anmei Hatsum popped out from behind a massive pile of mechanical limbs, goggles askew, grinning like she'd never seen a better opportunity to test her babies. Oh, Midoriya. Long time no see. Or should I say Midoriya-chan? Midoriya's soul briefly left her body. Uraraka covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. Ida cleared his throat awkwardly. Still working out the transformation tech bugs? Hatsum mused, lifting a charred prototype. But hey, you look great. I think the results speak for themselves. Midoriya smiled tightly. Thanks. I was hoping we could focus on my costume this time. Hatsum's grin only widened. Oh, looking for new support gear. Reinforcement bracers. Maybe a shock absorption joint module. Oh, I've got ideas. As Hatsum dragged her toward the drafting table, excitedly rambling about impact regulation and stylized thermal shielding, Midoriya glanced back at her friends with a nervous smile. Yeah, it was weird being back here. But she had to keep moving forward. No matter how many mortifying tech-induced accidents, or awkward breakfast conversations, stood in her way. It had only been a few minutes since they stepped into Hatsum's lab, but chaos had already swallowed the room whole. I just want to reinforce my support gear so my arms won't break again, Midoriya explained, a little nervously, clutching her notebook like a shield. Hatsum didn't seem to hear her. You know what your problem is, she said cheerfully, goggles sliding down her nose as she fished out a strange contraption from a pile of smoke-belching scraps. Midoriya blinked. You're thinking too small. You want to protect your arms, sure, but you're fighting like a one-track robot. You need to evolve. Hatsum flipped to SWSH and the device in her hands sparked ominously. I really just need some bracers, Midoriya tried again. Test subject time. What? Before she could dodge, Hatsum pressed a metal plate to Midoriya's upper back and hit another SWC. A sudden jolt of compressed air blasted Midoriya forward, arms flailing, notebook flying, as she skidded across the slick floor on reflex. She didn't fall. Instead, her legs shot out to catch herself in 3 tight, controlled bursts of movement. The third step was a pivot and crouch, muscles tense, balanced on instinct. Everything went still. Midoriya blinked. Her arms were fine. She'd caught herself entirely with her legs. I didn't even, she muttered. Hatsum's voice rang out proudly. See, muscle memory doesn't lie. Uraraka hurried over. Midoriya-chan, are you okay? She stood up slowly, eyes wide. I didn't use my arms. I caught myself with my legs. I've never done that before. Ida looked impressed. That was a precise recovery. Almost automatic. Midoriya's mind was racing now. She always thought she had to use her arms because All Might did. Because that's where One for All activated first. But her legs were strong. Stable. Less damaged. All that training, running, leaping, dodging, she'd been preparing for this without even knowing it. I've been limiting myself, she whispered. Because I thought I had to follow his path exactly. But I don't. Hatsum tossed her a half-finished prototype boot. Well, get ready to start kicking, hero girl. You've got so much potential down there. Midoriya blushed, holding the boot like it was sacred. Uraraka grinned. New moves incoming. Maybe, Midoriya smiled faintly, eyes lit with new purpose. Yeah, a whole new way to fight. And this time it wouldn't break her down. As they left the lab, with Uraraka still trying to wipe soot off her uniform and Hatsum already scribbling blueprints in the background, Midoriya lingered behind, the prototype boot hugged close to her chest. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. Legs, mobility, speed, stability. Everything she'd been overlooking in herself because she was trying too hard to mirror someone else. She looked over at Ida, who was walking ahead, arms moving in that purposeful clipped motion that always made him look like he belonged in a marching band. A fast marching band. She hurried to catch up. Ida-kun, she said, suddenly nervous. Do you think you could teach me some techniques? For movement. Kicking. Lower body combat. Ida stopped and blinked at her, his glasses catching the light. You want me to train you? She nodded, clutching the boot. You've always been amazing at using your legs. I've been so focused on power through my arms that I forgot how much control and power there is in speed, in momentum. And your recipro techniques, your form, it's efficient. I want to learn how to fight without breaking myself. For a moment Ida just stared. Then his eyes shimmered, and he placed a hand over his chest like she just honored his family. Legacy. I would be honored, Midoriya, he said proudly. It is the duty of a hero to pass down their skills for the betterment of the next generation. Even if we're in the same generation. Uraraka giggled. You're making it sound like you're retiring. Ida ignored that. We will begin training tomorrow morning. Prepare your calves. Midoriya laughed softly. Thank you, Ida-kun. Really? As they walked back toward the dorms under the slowly setting sun, Midoriya felt lighter. Like for the first time in a long while, she was no longer chasing someone else's path. She was carving out her own. Bakugo didn't give a damn about room contests. At least that's what he told himself. He watched from the edge of the common room, arms crossed, scowl in place as everyone laughed and bickered over who had the best interior design. Sato got the crown thanks to that diamond chiffon cake. Bribery, as Kaminari said, and Mineta was whining about dish duty like it was a war crime. Idiots. All of them. But even he had to admit, it wasn't a bad way to end the night. He kept stealing glances. Not that he meant to. But she was right there. Midoriya. Still grinning a little, still awkward when people teased her, still clutching that notebook half the time like it was armor. She looked different lately. It wasn't just the obvious though, yeah, he noticed that too. You'd have to be blind not to. But it was more than that. The way she carried herself. Her eyes. Like something was shifting in her, deep down. Something he couldn't quite place. And that bothered him. He shoved the thought aside and headed to the hallway, muttering something about getting water. Not because he was thinking too much. He just didn't want to sit there with a bunch of extras laughing like they'd already made it. But even as he walked away he heard it, her voice laughing. Easy. Warm. It hit him in the chest like a gut punch. Be a minute. He slammed his door shut harder than necessary. Bakugo hated dorms. Too many people, too much noise, too little space. He didn't care if it was for their safety or whatever. Being forced to sleep under the same roof as a bunch of loud, nosy idiots was not his idea of a secure environment. Especially when his room got judged like some home design competition. Sato and his diamond cake. Kaminari accusing him of not even trying. Ashido commenting that his room lacked warmth. And Zero, stupid stretchy Zero, putting up a 8-5 scorecard like this was the Olympics. He nearly exploded the hallway. At least Kirishima didn't say anything too dumb. He just gave Bakugo that usual grin and said, "It's very you, man." Whatever that meant. When training started again, Bakugo finally felt like he could breathe. Real work. Real progress. No distractions. Just him and the grind. He didn't need special moves or upgrade ideas. He was already ahead. Power, technique, instincts. That's all he needed. Still, even he could admit that watching everyone try to figure out their new tricks was kind of interesting. Kirishima had been messing around with hardening angles, sparring with Zero between sessions. Kaminari kept frying the target drones by accident and yelling, "It's a learning process." Every time he short-circuited. Ashido was flipping around like she belonged in a breakdancing tournament, her acid coating her arms like gloves. Midoriya was quieter. Too quiet. That's how Bakugo ended up awake past midnight, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling with a tight knot in his gut. He hadn't seen her since dinner. Probably journaling again or obsessing over All Might's words like she always did. Still trying to copy him, Bakugo thought, irritated. He wasn't sure what made him move. Restlessness. Habit. Something else he didn't want to name. But he left his room and headed upstairs, barefoot, hands in his pockets, hoodie over his head. He didn't expect anyone to be up there. But he heard voices. Low ones. He paused just around the corner from the rooftop balcony door. His hand curled into a fist. He didn't mean to overhear. But the scene, Todoroki and Midoriya, was impossible to ignore. His eyes narrowed as he watched from the shadow of the doorframe, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't place. The way Todoroki was sitting with her, the warmth of the flickering flame in his palm, the quiet space between them, it all struck him like a punch to the gut. Midoriya, her cheeks flushed from the cool night air, was sitting too close, her fingers brushing his. That light in her eyes, it was something Bakugo hadn't seen before, not directed at him at least. Her usual nervous energy had softened and she seemed content. Relaxed. Warmth helps sometimes. Todoroki's voice was low, calm, a slight rasp to it that Bakugo hated hearing in such a gentle tone. The next moment, Todoroki guided her head to his shoulder. Bakugo's BLD ran cold. He didn't even know why the hell it pissed him off. She'd always been friendly with Todoroki and hell they were teammates. This wasn't something that should bother him. But it did. It wasn't jealousy, right? No, it couldn't be. He had no reason to feel this way. But there was something about the way Todoroki had moved, how he was holding Midoriya so effortlessly close, and how Midoriya didn't even flinch when he did it. As if it was natural. As if it felt right. Bakugo clenched his fists at his sides, biting down on the fire that burned in his chest. He hated this. He hated them, that calmness between them. How did Todoroki make it seem so easy? How could he just be there? Damn it, Bakugo muttered under his breath, turning on his heel and storming back down the hallway before anyone heard him. He was not going to stick around for this. Not tonight. It wasn't bad enough that Bakugo had overheard that stupid conversation on the rooftop. No, it just had to get better. So much better. When he couldn't sleep, his brain stuck on that DMN nerd and her cozy little moment with Icy Hot. He had tossed and turned all night, his head buzzing with thoughts of her with him. Just great. Great. The next morning he dragged himself into the kitchen, the entire dorm still too quiet for his liking. His eyes were bloodshot, his patience already worn thin. Bakugo had been at the breakfast table long before Midoriya and the others trickled in, his usual seat across from Kirishima and Denki. He hadn't been in the mood to talk much, just staring into his bowl of rice, angry at the stupid, sleepless night he just had. He could still hear that DMN nerd's laugh in his head. An Icy Hot. That calming voice. Her smile. He shoved a piece of bacon into his mouth trying to drown out the thoughts. Kirishima, ever the morning sunshine, was busy chatting about something or other, while Denki kept cracking jokes about the training exercises yesterday. But Bakugo wasn't listening. He was too busy thinking about everything he didn't want to think about. The last thing he needed was more of them, Midoriya and Todoroki acting like they were that close. And then, like fate just had it out for him, Todoroki walked in. It was always the same with him, so demon calm, so collected even with wet hair still dripping from the shower. He slid into the seat beside Midoriya without missing a beat. "Good morning," Todoroki greeted her, his voice cool and steady. And then, just loud enough for her to hear, he added, "How are you feeling? Was last night too hot?" Bakugo's head whipped around so fast that he nearly knocked his drink over. "What the hell do you mean too hot?" Midoriya's face went bright red and she started flailing with her hands. "And no, it's not like that. He was regulating his fire last night and I let him, touch his fire." Kirishima, who had been halfway through a bite of grilled salmon, nearly choked. "Hold up. You let him what?" "It wasn't like that," Midoriya cried, her voice getting louder, if anything her face burning. Even Ida, who had been quietly munching on his cereal, froze mid-chew. "Midoriya-kun. I recommend rephrasing," Todoroki, looking completely unfazed by the chaos he just sparked, added calmly. "I was helping her relax. It's not uncommon to share warmth when someone's distressed." Bakugo couldn't hold back any longer. "Yeah, well maybe don't talk about your freaking fire-touching therapy in the middle of breakfast," he snapped, slamming his chopsticks down on the table with a loud crack. "Oh, come on," Uraraka laughed, though she covered her mouth with her sleeve. "It's not like they were making out on the roof or anything." That was the last straw. Bakugo's eye twitched, his face turning a deeper shade of red than Midoriya's had been. "I'm not even gonna listen to this, Iki," he muttered, turning away and shoving his plate aside. He didn't even want to look at them. The stupid conversation. The stupid warmth. The stupid, unbothered looks on both of their faces. As far as Bakugo was concerned, the sooner he left, the better. He couldn't stand it, couldn't stand the way his mind kept spiraling back to the way Todoroki had been so close to her, all calm and careful, while he was just him. "Yeah, whatever," he grumbled, grabbing his bag and storming out of the cafeteria before anyone could comment further. There was no way he was sticking around for more of that. This marks the end of part 3 of What If Deku Became a Girl? A big thanks to aywashe for granting the permission to feature this amazing fanfiction. The link of the original fanfiction is in the description below. Please like the video and subscribe to Deku Universe for more interesting stories. Thank you and see you soon.